Front door painting process. Let's begin the door transformation by inflating your spray booth that will later be used to paint the door. This will catch the attention of ongoing passerbyers. Place sawhorses in the booth to transfer the door in once it is prepped. Use plastic liner inside your booth and a drop sheet to keep the booth as clean as possible and dust-free for the current and future jobs. Prepare a second set of sawhorses in a shaded area to put our door on to prep it. Remove the door from the frame. Do not remove the screws from the hinges, but only the pins in the hinges themselves, and place the door on the sawhorses. Seal the void from having removed the front door using plastic or a coroplast. Remove the door handle as well as the weather stripping at the bottom of the door. Do not remove anti-theft handles, as these require a locksmith to do so properly. In this case, mask it. Make sure to organize all removed screws so you don't lose them and to facilitate reinstallation. Mask the side of the door that will not be painted and tape the hole left from removing the door handle to avoid overspray ending up where you don't want it to. Flip the door to prep it. Apply deglosser onto your low-lint, solvent-tolerant rags liberally and apply to the door and frame. Make sure to always wipe in a swiping motion and add more deglosser as needed. Equally important to use a clean side of your rag in order to avoid simply spreading dirt around. The purpose of this step is to degloss the surface, but also to chemically remove all dirt and contaminants from the surface. Once the chemical clean has been completed, you'll need to scuff the surface to dislodge any additional dirt that may need to be mechanically removed and ensure that the surface is properly prepped. Paint will have a hard time sticking to any glossy surfaces. This is especially important for textured doors, as it can be difficult to get in all the crevices. Proper cleaning and deglossing requires both a chemical and mechanical component. If the door or frame is smooth, use a sander with 180 grit sandpaper to scuff the surface. For textured doors and for reaching corners and crevices, use scuff pads to scuff and degloss. This is a vital step, as these corners are often overlooked and where paint failures most commonly occur. Use the blower from your HVLP machine to remove any dust resulting from the mechanical clean, and a water-based paint-compatible tack cloth to clean up any remaining particles. Using an acetone-resistant sprayer, liberally spray acetone onto your low-lint, solvent-tolerant rag and apply to the door and frame in a swiping motion to remove any remaining dirt particles and/or contaminants that may still be on the surface and to evaporate any remaining solvents left by the deglosser. If any dents need to be puttied, now would be the time. Prepare your two-component putty by mixing the catalyst with the putty and apply it with a trowel to cover the dent. Once dry, sand the putty smooth. Wipe sanding dust with your tack cloth and prime the puttied area. Sand the primer smooth and once again remove any remaining dust. Transfer your prep door into the spray booth. Allow airflow into your spray booth and turn it on. Let it run for a few minutes to evacuate any dust. Use plastic primer on any unpainted polypropylene moldings. While the door is being prepped, the remaining crew members need to remove all the caulking surrounding the frame, assuming the frame is also being painted, of course. Paint will not stick to silicone caulking and very likely to crack if you paint over other types of caulking. There are a few ways to remove caulking depending on how old and/or hard it has become. When caulking is relatively new and still gummy, you'll be able to pull it off. When it is old and hard, you'll have to use an oscillating tool to cut it off. This will also be the case for very adhesive caulkings, even if they are still gummy. Mask any surfaces that will not be painted on the frame. Make sure to mask any potential danger zones that can get overspray onto them. Use the same steps on the door frame to prep it for paint. Degloss it, scuff it, tack cloth, and acetone. Stir the door and window paint. Never shake it, as this will create air bubbles that could affect the finish. Add the catalyst using a 10-to-1 ratio. Adjust paint for weather as needed using either accelerator or retarder. Fill the spray equipment with the paint using a filter. Test the spray pattern before painting the door. Adjust your equipment to spray all the corners and edges. Test your pattern and fill in all edges and corners. This is what filled-in edges and corners should look like. Adjust your equipment for a tack coat. Test your pattern and apply a tack coat on the door. A tack coat should be applied the length of the door and sprayed from a bit further than your final coat. This is what a tack coat should look like. Adjust your spray equipment for the final coat. You don't need to wait. By the time you've tack coated the entire door, you'll be ready for the final coat. Final coat should be applied the width of the door to more easily maintain a wet edge. It is important to spray the final coat over the tack coat while it is still tacky and not dry. This is why it is called a tack coat. Waiting too long could potentially cause intercoat adhesion issues as the film will have fully cross-linked. The purpose of the tack coat is to prevent sagging and serves as a foundational coat for your top coat, but it must fuse and cross-link together with the top coat. This cannot happen if it is too advanced in the cross-linking process, and is why spraying in direct sunlight is likely to cause adhesion issues. The film will sometimes dry so fast that it doesn't even have the time to fuse with the surface, let alone remain tacky for an additional coat. This is why we always spray the door and the mobile spray booth. It also avoids any debris from falling into the wet paint and ruining the finish. Proceed to spray the top coat the width of the door to maintain a wet edge. This should be between 3 and 4 mils wet, but you'll be able to tell visually if the surface is covered with the new color. If the paint is applied too thin, you will get a rough finish. It is important to adjust your equipment and use proper spraying techniques. Be mindful of distance from the surface, as well as angle and appropriate 50% overlap. Notice the distance our sprayer is spraying from the surface and how much he is overlapping his coats. This ensures a uniformly wet coat that looks like this. If an additional coat is required because the product is applied too thin, make sure not to wait too long or you will need to scuff the surface before painting. If the paint is no longer tacky, you should scuff to avoid any adhesion issues. Marvel at that new beautiful factory finish. This is what the final coat should look like a brand new door. Apply the same spraying process to the frame, corners and edges, tack coat, and final coat. Once dry, you're ready to untape. Prepare your caulking tube. Ensure that the paint is dry to the touch and apply the caulking around the frame. Smooth any edges as needed. Reinstall the door. Reinstall the weather strippings and door handle onto the door. Get ready for that huge smile on your customer's face.